Hello everyone. This is lesson 20. If you recall, at the end of lesson 19, Joseph has welcomed his brothers into Egypt, and they became the 12 heads of the tribes of the Israelite tribes. Now, we must remember that we're reading an allegory. We don't know if Abraham lived. We don't know if he actually had to sacrifice Isaac. We don't know if Jacob struggled with the angel. In this allegory, Egypt is not just a country. Egypt is a metaphor for authorities enslaving people to dogma, enslaving people to the way of the mind, enslaving people to being dogmaites. So on one level, it sounds like they're being enslaved to labor, but on the deeper level, the level of the allegory, they're being enslaved to religion and to politics, and it's very similar to the world we have today, in which we're enslaved to the media, what the media says, we're enslaved to what advertisers say, we're enslaved to our social groups, we're enslaved to, especially, to religion. All over the world, even in China, which has outlawed most religion, there is religious thinking, religious logic that controls behavior and thinking. That's all Egypt. Now, what I'd like to do now is read a poem that Jesus wrote about people who enslave other people to dogma. Jesus said, if they, who are they? They are people who enslave other people. They are clerics, they're politicians, they're any authority figures, they're parents. Anyone who wants to enslave other people to their dogmas, to their way of thinking and behavior. Over on the right side, on the side, we see a pyramid. Those are people who have many false selves and want other people to conform to their false self, their level of false selves. If they should say to you this, behold, oh, be in amazement. The kingdom is in my heavens. The kingdom, remember, is the Garden of Eden. The kingdom is nirvana. The kingdom is the promised earth. If they should say to you, you are going to be completely fulfilled in my heavens. By that they mean in my level of truth and love. So preachers and others who are declaring that their dogmas are true and that other people should live them, are trying to hold people to a level of belief. Jesus is trying to destroy that by teaching the process of leaving a level of belief and continually evolving so that one is absolutely free from beliefs and faith and is one with themselves and one with spirit. So if they should say to you this, behold, the kingdom is in my heaven, then the birds of their heavens will come to be first before you. Birds are ideas. When Jesus says will come to be first before you, he's referring to Exodus chapter 20, verse 3, where in one of the 10 commandments says, do not put false gods before you. So very cleverly, Jesus is saying, indoctrinators are false gods, and their ideas are false gods. And don't put them before you. Put yourself in oneness with spirit before you. That's what this is saying. So there's a type of indoctrinator who tries to convince other people with their ideas. Now let's read the second part of the poem. If they should say to you this, behold, the kingdom is in my sea, then the fish will come to be first before you. A sea is, he's talking about a sea of emotions. Some indoctrinators use logic to convince people to follow them on their level of truth and love. Others use emotion to convince people. And they are, so those are the people who say the kingdom is in my emotional life, in my emotional ideas. Then the fish are emotional ideas, will come to be first before you. So if they should say to you this, behold, the kingdom is in my sea, then their fish will come to be first before you. Don't make emotional ideas or logical ideas your false gods. Politicians use emotion. Commentators use emotion. Clergy use emotion to convince people to follow them and follow their way of understanding the world. Jesus is leading us out of that, and so is Buddha and Eve and Abraham. They're saying, no, listen to them, but ultimately come back and be an Israelite, not a dogmaite. These people are trying to make everybody into dogmaites. Come back and be an Israelite, be free to be your independent, wonderful, divine self. Buddha says the same thing. Let's read a poem from Buddha. Buddha said, the seeker surrenders his beliefs and therefore peers beyond the end and the beginning. He cuts all dependencies and he surrenders all desires to be free. On the side we see the pyramid with a person listening, single ear listening. In order to be single ear listening, we must cut all dependencies. That's the covenant. Go from the influence of your family, from your culture, go to the promised earth. The promised earth is what Buddha is talking about. The seeker surrenders his beliefs. He doesn't take on the beliefs of others, and he doesn't take on his own beliefs. All of his beliefs are tentative. Buddha said the seeker surrenders his beliefs. Those on the way of the soul are continually experiencing life, forming tentative beliefs. Then they surrender those beliefs in order to experience the world without bias. If you hang on to your beliefs, you use them as filters to understand life. People on the way of life, on the way of the soul, try to avoid that. They are aware of their bias. They are aware of when they distort facts, when they ignore facts to support their beliefs. Instead, they're continually forming tentative beliefs. And Buddha says, and therefore they peer beyond the end and the beginning. They move into the Garden of Eden, into the promised earth, where they experience that they are eternal. He cuts all dependencies. He leaves all influences. He makes all influences secondary to being one with himself and one with spirit. And he surrenders all desires in order to be free. So to the degree that we are attached to a desire to be wealthy, to be famous, to be have meaning in our life, to have a soulmate, to that degree we're constantly going to be shaping ourselves in order to achieve those false selves. If we surrender our desire for everything except our desire to be ourselves, then we will have fulfillment in the promised land, in the promised earth, in the Garden of Eden, in nirvana, and in the kingdom. That is the end of that short lesson 20, but I hope you found it helpful. If you want an overview of what we're doing, go to the website www.7771.org, and read the overview. You should probably be reading that often because it continually tells you how the way of the soul differs from the way of the mind. Thank you and have a good day.